What's up, guys? Back for a quick video here. This is probably one of my favorite articles. It's a 1947 Awake article, and it goes back to January 8th, 1947. And I bought 10 years worth of Awakes to get this one. It's kind of rare to find this one, but it brings out something that, if it doesn't cause you to think, if it doesn't cause you to start saying, maybe there's some problems there, well, maybe nothing will. And what it is it's covering the subject of excommunication. So let's go back and let's go back to the page 27, or the 27th page here. And you can see the article talking about excommunication in reference to the Catholic Church. I'll start down here, and it brings out the first point, which really isn't the most significant, but it is a key point, because it shows how the scriptures can be used to support one thing and then be used to not support one thing and then be able to use 10, 20 years later, in this case 5 years later, they use the same scriptures to then support it, just like the Catholics. So what's it start off saying? It says, "This is canon law, which the Roman Catholic hierarchy seeks to enforce on the pretext that it's God's law." So that's what they're speaking about in regards to excommunication. It says, "The authority for excommunication, they claim, is based on the teachings of Christ and the apostles, as found in the following scriptures." It quotes Matthew, 1 Corinthians, Galatians, 1 Timothy, as well as Titus. And for anybody that's a witness, I again encourage you to look this article up, reference those scriptures. They now use the same scriptures to support disfellowshipping. So it goes on to say, "But the hierarchy's excommunication as a punishment and medicinal remedy finds no support in these scriptures. In fact, it is altogether foreign to Bible teachings." Now, they introduced disfellowshipping in 1952. That's 5 years after this article comes out. So to me, that's bad enough. If that doesn't illustrate the man-made nature of the organization, I really don't know what does. So it continues on. It continues on here to really get to the main point of what I'm getting at. And before we touch on that, actually, what I want to say is that as a witness, if you are a witness or ever have been, you will know that anything that has a pagan influence, like even Mother's Day, witnesses do not celebrate Mother's Day because it can, it's a form of what they call creature worship, but they would also talk about the pagan influence of Mother's Day and thousands of years ago, how there's, that's where it originated from. And that's fine and dandy if you keep that level across the board. If you say, hey, if it's pagan, I'm not doing it, and you flat out across the board, that's what you do, well, nobody can fault you. You're following through with what you say, and you're doing what you say. But what the witnesses said in 1947 is this: where then did this practice originate? The practice of excommunication, disfellowshipping, again, whatever word you want to use. It says the Encyclopedia Britannica says that papal excommunication is not without what? It's not without pagan influence. And its variations cannot be adequately explained unless account be taken of several non-Christian analogues of excommunication. The superstitious Greeks believed that when an excommunicated person died, the devil entered the body, and therefore, in order to prevent it, the relatives of the deceased cut his body in pieces and boiled them in wine. Even the Druids had a method of expelling those who lost faith in their religious superstitions. What it's saying here is that the Greeks, the Druids, when somebody left their faith, they left the faith of the Greeks, they left the faith of the Druids, they had a certain thing that they would do to these excommunicated individuals. So they left the faith, they were excommunicated, they had things they did to prevent the devil entering their body. The point being is it's going back to an original influence from what they would term as a pagan influence. They even say it's a pagan influence. The Encyclopedia Britannica says that papal excommunication is not without pagan influence. That's a direct quote. At the end of that verse, or at the end of that paragraph, it says, "It was therefore, after Catholicism adopted its pagan practices, AD 325, that this new chapter in religious excommunication was written." I mean, that hit me. As an ex-Jehovah's Witness, or at the time reading that as a Jehovah's Witness, I went, oh my God. So in 1947, they're telling me it's pagan. And in 1952, You'll never hear a reference to excommunication being pagan. And it's because they begin to use it. They see the usefulness in excommunication. What is that usefulness? Let's continue. Therefore, as the pretensions of the hierarchy increased, the weapon of excommunication became the instrument by which the clergy attained a combination of ecclesiastical power and secular tyranny that finds no parallel in history. Now, the Jehovah's Witnesses are mainly after that ecclesiastical power, but through the ecclesiastical power, they dictate everything you do in your life. Absolutely everything that you do in your life. And in doing so, they also very strictly govern the group. I promise you that if you were to bring this to your elders, you would have serious trouble. If you don't immediately accept the explanation that they give you, if you ask questions, if you say, well, why did you misquote, talking to my other video on the cross, well, what about this misquote from this dictionary on the cross? Why did that happen? Don't ask one or two, don't ask more than one question. You might get away with one. But what happens is you are viewed as a devil. You go look at the 2020 convention that's out right now. They talk about apostates as liars and apostate lies. What's the apostate lie? We read from your material. We read from your material and we ask logical questions. We ask logical questions like, why would you call excommunication something that has pagan influence? And then just 5 years later, why would you then say that, well, you know what? We got a little pagan influence, we're going to adopt this technique. Why would you teach that the generation that saw the events of 1914 wouldn't pass away, and then you just simply move on to something else? The fact is, this is a tiny drop in a bucket. And I hate seeing every person I've ever loved or known be controlled and be in a situation where they don't understand what freedom is. That was one of the most unique parts of coming out of a high control group occult, is you don't know what freedom is as a witness. You don't know what the feeling of being able to make your own decisions is. It's a very unique feeling, and I never felt it until I left the witnesses. And it's something that is one of the first things that kind of start to come once you realize that it's just a group of men who maybe they do have the best of intentions, but the fact is they are not the one source of truth today. And a very quick look back at their history, we'll see massive contradictions, we'll see massive amounts of lies, tons of failed prophecy, and any reasonable person looks at that and goes, guys, I think we could make the case that you're not the one true religion today. You combine that with shunning your son, your daughter, you combine that with letting people die from not having blood, from a failed interpretation of the blood issue. You put that in combination with keeping a list of pedophiles and for protecting pedophiles, which is all over the news. I mean, you literally have to have your head buried in the sand to see that. When you start putting these things together, there are some hard questions that come up. It was probably the toughest 2 or 3 months of my life asking those questions to myself. But the fact is, what's on the other side is worth it. And at the very least, hope I gave you guys some questions to ask, because this is the life that you get. And if you waste it doing things that you don't enjoy, if you waste it doing things that bring you no satisfaction, then you're going to look back at the end of your life, you're going to have some serious regrets. And if I can help one person to have the same benefit that other people like, your John Cedars, your XJW Analyzer, which is another channel now, your XJW Critical Thinker, all the people, a goat like Allie's Big Toe, all these people that genuinely care for people, we're trying to hopefully save a life. That's how we view it. Because when somebody spends their life in Watchtower, they don't do what they want to do. They don't do an ounce of what they want to do. And when they get out and they experience the freedom, you're given a gift. You're given a hell of a gift. And I was given that gift. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm doing these videos. Because, for me, I view myself as a very intelligent person. I ran a business my entire life. But I genuinely believed what the witnesses were teaching. And as embarrassing as that is for me to say, I know that if you are taught it from birth, you can believe anything. And because of that, it takes people who are in your situation to come out and say, look, no, Satan's not going to pop out of the wall if you decide to look and research your religion. It's just not going to happen. Any God that says you can't ask reasonable questions is a God I have no intention of serving. And when I started to think like that, when I started to realize that all throughout the Bible, it encourages questioning, it encourages asking questions, it encourages finding out, seeking for truth as if for a hidden treasure. Well, I can promise you, if you're seeking for something, you don't go to one source for information. That's the best way to get snowballed and to believe something that's completely false. It's the best way to get told that disfellowshipping is a loving arrangement from God, when just 50, 60 years earlier, in a part of your organization you have no idea about, they're quoting the Encyclopedia Britannica that says excommunication, disfellowshipping, whatever word you want to use, is not without pagan influence. So if that was a new thought for you guys, I can assure you there's a lot of new thoughts you have no idea about in your organization's history. I encourage you to start looking, and I hope that gets you on your way. All right, guys, see you all back for the next one. Till then, have a good one.